discovered my brother was secretly using company funds to finance his gambling addiction, leaving me to decide between reporting him or covering family. Knowing either choice could destroy careers and leave emotional scars that last forever. I am 22, and my name is Marissa. I live in a tiny apartment outside Raleigh, North Carolina, but most of my family still lives back in our hometown 2 hours from here. I was taken in by my older brother Daniel, now 28, and for most of my life, he was the man I idolized above all others. Daniel just oozed this confidence, as if he could walk into a room and people would just stop and hear what he had to say. He made good grades, was on the high school basketball team, and the first in our family to graduate from college. My parents bragged about him constantly. I would admit I joked that Daniel was the golden child and I was the leftovers, but actually I was proud of him too. He worked his way into management at a mid-sized trucking company in Charlotte, and he made significantly more money than anyone else in our family ever did, at least we figured. I knew something was wrong around 6 months ago when he came over to see me one weekend. I was making pasta in my kitchen, and he was on my couch, scrolling through his phone like always, but he was tense, not tired from work. His leg wouldn't stop bouncing, and he barely even picked at the food. I questioned him about it, and he brushed it off, said he was stressed from some big project at work. I wished to believe him, but there was this edge in his voice that I hadn't ever heard before. That evening, when he believed I was asleep, I heard him pacing in my living room, whispering into the phone. His voice was low, angry, desperate almost. I just caught snippets, terms like payment, cover it, and tomorrow, I swear. My stomach was churning because I knew this was not the Daniel that I knew. The thing about me is, I've never been too nosy for my own good. The next morning, when he was taking his shower, I glanced at his phone when it flashed on the countertop. I know I shouldn't have, but something about me had to know. I had unread texts from the number Vic. One of them said, "If you don't bring the cash tonight, I'm cutting you off for life. Don't think I won't come visit your office." My heart tightened. My golden boy brother was in trouble somehow, but I didn't go to him. I couldn't. I just pretended I hadn't seen anything and let him off later that day as if nothing had occurred. For weeks thereafter, I carried the sting of it in silence. I couldn't stop replaying those words repeatedly in my head, wondering what kind of trouble he was in. Then, about a month later, it all came crashing down in a way I never could have anticipated. I got a call from my mother late in the evening. She was crying, her voice shaking. Something was happening at Daniel's workplace, she explained. His boss had found irregularities in the books of the business, and money was missing, a significant amount of money. Mom didn't know the particulars, only that Daniel was being investigated, and if it was true, his whole career would be over. I felt cold all over. It explained everything then. The text messages, the late-night phone calls, the tension. Daniel was stealing from his own firm, not to pay for cars or vacations, but to gamble. I soon discovered he had been visiting underground poker houses and using betting applications on his phone, running up losses he couldn't possibly repay. The amount astounded me. More than $60,000 gone in under a year. For a business his size, that was a substantial amount of money. Enough to land him in jail. Enough to destroy his life. I slept not a wink that night. I couldn't help but remember the boy who used to give me a ride to school in his beat-up Honda, playing old rock songs and making me laugh when I was worried about a test. The brother who taught me how to shoot a basketball, who did my math homework for me late into the nights, even when he had his own homework to do. That was the Daniel I knew. And then I had this stranger standing in front of me, one desperate enough to risk everything for a game of chance. A week later, he phoned me directly. His voice cracked when he said, "Marissa, I need you." I could tell that he had cried. He admitted it all, not in details, but enough. He explained that he got in over his head, that he had borrowed money to gamble with, lost, and then used company money to try to win it back. He vowed he was going to pay it back before anyone found out about it. He did not want it to have come this far, he said. My throat tightened listening to him because I could hear the shame and the hope within his voice, as if maybe I could save him. He asked me to meet him halfway between our towns at a diner. When I walked in and saw him sitting there in his dirty shirt, his hair not combed, his eyes reddened, I barely recognized him. He looked shattered. He told me the company was still investigating, but hadn't yet reported it to the police. He begged me not to tell anyone else in the family, even mom and dad, because it would kill them to know the truth. And then he dropped the bombshell on me. He needed me to help him raise the cash to pay back quietly what he had stolen before the company would make a final decision. He assured me if he could right this one mistake, he would never gamble again. He just needed an escape. I sat there staring at him, my fork still on the plate of eggs in front of me. My head spun. I don't have $60,000. I don't even have 6. I'm 22, just out of school, working part-time to put a roof over my head. He knew this. So when I asked him how exactly he thought I was supposed to help him, his answer wanted to make me scream. He wanted me to go to our parents, or better, to lie for him if need be, to say it was some kind of error or technical failure, to lie for him on his behalf, even at the risk of going myself. That was when I realized what kind of impossible choice I was making. If I lied for him, I'd be helping him cover up a crime, one that could lead to further and further. If I said I'd destroy his life, maybe land him in jail, and tear our family apart doing so. Either way, there'd be scars that never healed. I was sick, sitting in that booth, staring across at the brother I used to idolize, trying to decipher how in the hell we ended up here. I couldn't shake for the remainder of the night night after the diner. I drove home in silence, no music, no podcast, only the thud of my own heart pounding in my ears. Every time I thought of Daniel's face, the guilty look in his eyes, this pull in my chest. But then I thought of what he was requesting me to do, and my stomach turned. I wanted to help him. God, I did. But what he wanted was not just help. What he wanted was for me to lie. He wanted me to stand in his path and stop him from coping with the consequences of his own choices. And I did not know if I were stupid enough or brave enough to do so. The following week was a blur. I was receiving texts from him constantly, sometimes just plainly begging me to call. Others such as, "I swear I'll pay it all back, you just don't tell them," or "Please don't tell mom and dad." I dismissed half of them because I didn't know what to say anymore. But at the same time, I couldn't possibly block him. I'd look at his name lighting up my screen, and I'd just stop. He was my brother, my only brother. We'd lived for everything together. How could I abandon him now? But then how could I ignore what he'd done? I knew my parents did not possess that kind of money. Dad is 57, works maintenance for a factory in town, and mom is 54 and works part-time at a library. They've lived paycheck to paycheck their whole lives. They'd never be able to scrape together even a fraction of what Daniel needed. And even if they could, it would ruin whatever bit of stability they still have remaining. And what if he just gambled again? What if it never ended? I'd be dragging him with me, bringing the rest of us down along with him. A few days later, I knew I couldn't hold it in anymore. I phoned my best friend, Alina, who is 23 and whom I'd been friends with since middle school. We parked in her car outside of a coffee shop, and I told her everything, all of the details. My hands shook so hard that I could barely get the words out. When I finished, she just stared at me for so long before she said, "Marissa, if you cover for him, you'll go down with him. You know that, right?" And I had known she was right. But to have it said out loud made it feel so much worse. Alina did not sugarcoat it. She said, "He's an addict. He's not going to stop just because he says he will. If he took 60 grand this time, who knows? He'll do it again. What if more is next time? You can't do anything for him about it." I wanted to argue, to stand up for him, to inform her that he was not some irresponsible addict, that he was my brother. But the words were jammed in my throat because I knew the truth I did not wish to hear, she was saying. The pressure was compounded when my parents called me a few days later. They were frightened and perplexed. They said Daniel had been strange, arriving at their home in the middle of the night, yelling at them for nothing. Mom said she caught him sitting in the driveway at 2 in the morning, just staring at the steering wheel as though he didn't even recognize where he was. They didn't know the cash yet, but they intuited something wasn't right, and they questioned me if I knew. I lied. I told them that I didn't know. I hated myself for it. At the same time, Daniel kept spinning out of control. He confessed to me one night on the phone that several of the people that he owed money to weren't just friends in gambling circles. He informed me that some of them were not good people, and they would be visiting him if he did not pay soon. I was scared the first time I ever really scared. I wasn't scared for him, but for all of us. What if they came to my parents' home? What if they came to his job? My whole body ran cold just thinking about it. I tried to talk sense into him. I begged him to meet with me, to get help, to confess to the company before things got out of hand. He screamed at me. He said that if I really cared, I'd be standing behind him, not behind his back. He said I was betraying him for even considering turning him in. That evening, after we got off the phone, I sat on the floor of my bathroom sobbing until I couldn't catch my breath. I was being split in two. The breaking point was 2 weeks later. I went home for the weekend to visit my parents, and when I arrived, the tension in the house was so thick you could choke on it. Mom was crying in the kitchen. Dad was pacing in the living room, and Daniel was nowhere to be found. Dad finally told the truth. The company had officially confronted Daniel. They knew it was him. They hadn't yet gone to the police, but just a matter of time. They gave him a chance to own up, to say why, and instead of owning up, he ran. He was gone for almost 2 days. When he came back, he was worse than usual. His clothes were dirty, his hands shaking, his skin pale. He collapsed onto the couch and slurred something about being at an out-of-state casino. He lost all of what was left to him. He begged us, Mom and Dad, not to give up on him. I stood in the doorway looking at the man I used to idolize, and I did not even recognize the person in front of me. That night, after everybody had retired to bed, I sat in my old bedroom staring at the ceiling. I knew that there was no quick escape. Either I went and assisted in covering up this debacle, or I left and let the truth fall on him, and on us all. Both felt like betrayal. Both felt like loss. And I couldn't help wondering over and over again, which loss could I survive? I don't think I've ever been more torn in my life than I was those weeks. Every time I went to see my parents, they looked older, weaker, like the weight of what Daniel had done was pushing down on them by the day. Mom's hands shook when she reached for her coffee cup, and Dad barely spoke at all, which scared me even more than his anger ever could have. It was a silence that was heavy with disappointment too great to be uttered. I couldn't help but ask myself if I was a coward for not speaking up, for letting them think this was some sort of misunderstanding, when I knew the truth. Daniel, however, was crumbling before our eyes. He tried to be normal at first, first, helping around the house, pretending smiles, but his nerves got the best of him. I caught him chain-smoking outside one night, which I had never seen him do. He glanced up at me with these tired, glassy eyes and whispered, "I don't know how to stop, Marissa. I don't know how." And something inside of me broke hearing that. He wasn't careless, he wasn't cocky, he was drowning. And a part of me was desperate to jump in and save him, no matter the cost. But the other part of me could not get past thinking about the business, the employees that he had who depended on him, the families who counted on their jobs there. $60,000 wasn't numbers on a monitor. It was stolen from people who earned it. And if I helped him keep it hidden, I'd be betraying them too. That thought haunted me in the dead of night when I couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling. The tipping point came on a Saturday when I came home again. We were all in the living room, tense and quiet, when the doorbell rang. It wasn't relatives, it wasn't neighbors, it was two men I'd never met. They weren't in uniform, but there was something about them that screamed trouble. They asked for Daniel by name, and when Dad said he wasn't home, they left the message. They told him he had until Friday to pay what he owed or things would get ugly, and then they were gone, cool as can be, like they just delivered a pizza. I will never forget my mom's face when she heard those words. She turned white, as if the life was sucked out of her. Dad shut the door and said something about calling the police, but Daniel, who had been hiding upstairs, rushed down before Dad could even get to the phone. He pleaded with us not to. He vowed that calling the police would only make things worse. He swore he had a plan. He always had a plan. That night, the house exploded. Mom was sobbing, begging him to tell the truth. Dad was shouting, pacing, his voice cracking with rage. Daniel finally broke. All of it. The gambling, the money he'd borrowed, the threats. Having it said out loud made the room spin. Mom collapsed into the chair, her hands over her face. Dad said things I'd never heard him say to either of us. "You're not my son anymore." And the silence afterward hurt worse than anything. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed Daniel's arm and dragged him outside before Dad said something he couldn't take back. We were out in the cold night air and I whispered, "Do you have any idea what you've done? Can't you see what this is doing to all of us?" He didn't answer right away. Then at last he said, "I cannot lose everything, Marissa. Please, you have to help me. If you love me, you will help me." And that's when I knew something painful. His definition of love and mine weren't the same. For him, love was blind loyalty, covering his messes at any cost. For me, love was supposed to be holding someone back, even from themselves. But who was right? Who was love? And who betrayal? The next day I drove home to Raleigh and locked myself in my apartment. I didn't answer his calls. I didn't answer my parents either. I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop, thinking about sending an email to his company's board. I typed it out 3 times, telling them everything, laying it all out as plainly as I could. But each time I got to the end, my hands froze, because pressing send would be ending his career, maybe even landing him in prison. It would be telling the world what my brother really was. And once I'd done that, there would be no going back. But not sending it was to live in fear of what came next. The men with guns at the door, the lies, the way my parents' faces were imploding in on themselves. It was to be complicit. It was to sacrifice myself, my family, and who knows how many others, all to keep Daniel's secret. I phoned Alina again that evening. I was crying so intensely that I could barely breathe. I told her everything. The men, the threats, the breakdown at home. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something that I will never forget. "Marissa, you can't keep choosing between destroying him or destroying yourself. At some point, you have to choose the truth." The truth. That word tolling in my head like a bell. The truth could kill us or save us, but at least it would be true. And maybe that was better than living in this nightmare of lies. I didn't sleep. I just sat on my bed, laptop light in front of me, staring at the draft email I'd written. My finger hovered over the trackpad, the word send sitting like a trigger. I thought about Daniel, my parents, myself. I thought about the person I was attempting to be. And then, just before sunrise, I made my choice. When the sun came up that morning, my hands were still trembling. I stared at the laptop screen until my eyes hurt, reading and rereading the email. My whole body was numb, like I was floating above myself, watching from the outside. I thought about deleting it again, just closing the laptop and pretending none of this was happening, but I couldn't. I thought about the men at the door, my mom's face falling into her hands, Dad's voice breaking when he said those words to Daniel, and I pressed send. The second I did, I burst into tears. Not relief, not victory, sorrow. It was as if I'd shot my own family. I slid down the bedroom wall and cried until my chest ached. I knew I could not undo it. That afternoon, the call came, not from Daniel, but from my father. His voice was vacant, a void, as if he'd lost 10 years of his life in a night. He said the company had received a tip-off, that they were taking official action, and that Daniel had been suspended with immediate effect. The investigation wasn't internal anymore. They were calling in the police. Dad didn't ask me if it was me. He didn't need to. He simply said, "You did what you thought was right," and he hung up. I didn't hear from Daniel for almost a week. Those days were the longest of my life. I startled each time the phone rang. Each time I heard footsteps in the hall outside my apartment, my heart sped up, half expecting him to show up at my door. My parents barely spoke to me. When they did, it was strained, short sentences, clipped words. I could feel the distance growing, a crack down the center of us. Finally, one night, he called. His voice was low, shaky. "You told them," he said. A statement, not a question. My throat tightened. I tried to explain, to say I couldn't keep carrying the weight, that I couldn't lie anymore, that I couldn't watch our parents fall apart. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "You've ruined me," and the line went dead. I don't think I've ever felt a pain like that, worse than heartbreak, worse than betrayal, because it was the sound of my brother, the boy who chased me around the backyard, the teenager who taught me to drive, the man I used to be proud of. It was the sound of him cutting me out of his life. The next few months were brutal. The company pressed charges. Daniel was taken into custody. He pleaded out to receive a lighter sentence, but he still had to serve time. Watching my parents sit in that courtroom, watching my brother stand there in handcuffs, I felt like I was going to suffocate. Mom cried so hard she had to be taken out midway through. Dad just sat there, staring at the ground, his jaw tightening. And I simply sat there in shock, questioning if everyone knew it was me who had started this, questioning if they hated me for it. After the sentencing, Daniel never once looked at me. He walked past me like I was a stranger. And in that moment, I knew I had lost him, maybe forever. My parents have never said the words out loud, but I know they blame me. They never asked if I was the one who had sent that email, but silence can say a lot. Holidays aren't as wild now. Phone calls are short. Sometimes I feel like I destroyed not just Daniel's life, but our whole family. And yet, late at night, as I lie awake staring at the ceiling, I ask myself the same question over and over again. What if I hadn't done it? Would he have kept on stealing until the company collapsed? Would the men at the door have done something worse? Would my parents have lost everything trying to bail him out? Maybe I didn't save him, yet I might have saved us. It's hard to live with that kind of choice. There are days I convince myself I did the right thing. There are days I feel I betrayed the one person I ought to have saved. Both of those feelings are inside me at the same time, and I don't think they will ever go away. The truth is, there is no happy ending here. Daniel is serving his time. My parents barely speak my name, and I sit alone in my tiny apartment, trying to rebuild a life that's been shattered down the middle. But I just keep telling myself this: love isn't always shielding someone from the debris. Sometimes love is letting in the truth, even if it burns everything to the ground. I don't know if Daniel will ever forgive me. I don't know if my parents will either, but I do know this: secrets rot everything they touch, and no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't let ours keep growing.